The Blue Man logulum is unique. It's as unique as every tree is unique.
It is a very natural tone. I mean, it's the opposite of the way that we use a lot of metal percussion. There is something definitely very organic and earthy about the sound.
The logulum is essentially a collection of logs that are hollowed out to some degree so that they resonate when you play them.
Yeah, let's do it.
I always try to think of Blue Man music when we're writing it, try to think about what's the character's motivation. I mean, most of the time it's a little easy because there's a piece, you know, that's already developed or at least conceived. Say the song Creature Feature, that's in the Las Vegas show. The piece was written around these creature things that the Blue Men would wear that sort of looked a little bit like insects, but they were drum stations. So there it's kind of easy. You have your parameters defined. It's like, I know the Blue Men are in this world that is, you know, it's, as we say, a biomorphic world. That was when we started to think, well, maybe an organic material like the wood would make sense better than synthetic material like the PVC. So a lot of that song is more traditional instruments. It's, you know, the string band instruments, drums, logs. Myself and another Blue Man musician were in Hawaii, vacationing in Kauai, and we discovered a drum builder there, a local Hawaiian drum builder that would make traditional instruments. He'd build ukuleles by hand, and he had all these logs. It never really sparked the idea to bring it into Blue Man until we actually sat down with them and we started to learn some of the traditional Hawaiian rhythms that they would play on them and realized how they would integrate a couple of different pitched logs. First, we bought some logs from this drum builder in Hawaii, and they were beautiful pieces of art. I mean, ornately carved with designs. And we started to use them, and then we thought, well, let's experiment with making some of our own so that, you know, just that we can have a little bit more learning and control about it for ourselves. So that was when we asked FOPA, is this something you can do? You think you can make some logs at different pitches for us, and let's see what, you know, see what you come up with.
He knows a lot about wood because he's a Dutch guy who went through the guild system, so he knows all about, I don't know, restoring 18th century European furniture or something. I thought he'd be the right guy to go upstate and forage, kind of. And so he went up there with a chainsaw and he cut trees that were already falling on the ground into pieces and tested a bunch of stuff.
Research-wise, in my case, was more or less winging it. I didn't know anything about rhythm instruments in that regard, nor am I a lumberjack. I bought a chainsaw and started experimenting. Finding the right wood was actually pretty difficult. Driving around upstate, finding trees, fallen trees, the myth on the most expensive violins like the Stradivarian is you've got to find dead standing wood. Wood that is already dead but still standing. The goal was to find trees in that category.
I started getting texts from him of photos and videos of him in the woods in upstate New York with a chainsaw, dressed head to toe in his normal black dress shirt and black dress pants and dress shoes with a chainsaw, like, you know, cutting logs and tapping on different ones just to show me that, you know, it's possible.
And so after a couple of weekends of doing that, he would come down here and we'd listen to him and see what was good and what was bad and if we should take the bark off or all this practical stuff, you know.
Unfortunately, we did have to do some of that learning on, you know, on our own. And the first show that we put logs into was in Las Vegas, where the climate is obviously really dry and hot.
The funny thing is that in the case of Blue Man, we always try to do the impossible. And I think we done that with this one by introducing an instrument made out of a tree into the desert, which is the most difficult place to do that.
So a lot of the wood that we were sending from upstate New York, from a humid summertime, as you might imagine, by the time it got to Vegas and sat there for a week, they were cracking and the the sound was changing a lot, so we started to experiment with fashioning our own that weren't just like a branch off a tree that was hollowed out, but we've done some experimentations just with like building our own cylindrical wooden, instruments. It's a really complementary sound, I think, actually, when we've used it.
But visually, when you see it in the show, I mean, it's a pretty spectacular moment in the show because these logs are on these instruments and the tone is earthy and it's matching the tone of the video design. And it's the first time you hear it in the show, and it's just like, it's just a part of this whole shift at that moment in the show. It works really well.